I would first ask for a permission to exchange this nice English word Archbishopric with something more Balkanic. Can we use Archiepiscopia? I think it's much better, but I just wanted to be...
More authentic.
Yes, more authentic than... Yeah. So, in the last days, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, the canonical or the autonomic or the autocephalous status of Macedonian Orthodox Church, the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid, is all over the media. Reporting and discussion about the move of the Constantine Patriarch and the Serbian Orthodox Church on the matter to recognize the Macedonian Church. And as I said, the media coverage is just vast, and there are endless line of commentators that are everyone now became expert on the church matters, and they were basically all speaking about the greatness of our church as one of the oldest churches, that even the Kievian Russian church was once part of this, and all other great movements and things. But the central part that is never forgotten is that the Macedonian Orthodox Church has preserved the Macedonian national essence and conscience throughout the history. Let's start with a short introduction to the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid. Just a few bare facts. The church in the kingdom of Tsar Samuel, that he has ruled large portion of the Balkans from 969 to 1018. Actually, he died 4 years ago, but he's basically, when we speak about kingdom of Samuel and his widow and his son, so we all end up with 1018. Samuel elevated his church in 1996 to a patriarchate with the seat in Prespa and Ohrid. And it was autocephalous regarding his kingdom, but after the defeat and after Emperor Basil II took over the state's territory, he lowered the rank of the to Archiepiscopia. And few centuries later, after the Ottoman conquest, then the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid became part of the under the Patriarchate of Constantinople as the sole representative of the Rum millet. So, years later, the Archbishopric of Ohrid was abolished in 1767. And then, almost after a century, the Macedonian national ideas entered the, how to say, the Hrok phase B, according to Miroslav Hrok, the idea of levels of the national process, national building process. And the centerpiece, center story, central myth became the re-establishing or restoration of the glorious Archiepiscopia of Ohrid as a Macedonian church. And then, and this was seen actually as an attempt to get a church with the liturgy in Old Slavonic, to have a local priest, and the schools using the vernacular, the local language, instead of Greek, as it was custom of the time. So, in the development of Macedonian national narrative, the Archbishop of Ohrid was perceived as a Macedonian and a core of its national, cultural, educational church center that preserved, as we said, the Macedonian core and essence through the ages. But the national story later did not stop here. It started to spread, of course, backwards, because the national identity always looked to find its roots as far as possible in the past, in the glorious time and the glorious past that someone has stolen from us. And basically, the national narrative started speaking the Church of Ohrid as one established of Apostle the Paul. The logic behind this, since the Ohrid, the town of Ohrid, or Lich Nidos, is situated on the Via Ignatia, so Paul must have passed through the town and he must have started the church. Later on, there was the Archiepiscopia Justiniana Prima from 535. That is also seen as a connection between the Church of Paul in Ohrid to the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid. And to be more precise, in the national narrative, as the biggest figure, or actually the ideal founder of the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid is the Clement of Ohrid, Saint Clement of Ohrid. Actually, this is one of the disciples of St. Cyril and Methodius, who was appointed as a bishop in the area around Ohrid, somewhere in 893. So the national idea is trying to get all this connection from the Paul through all the great archiepiscopacies that actually were part on this territory. And of course, the national narrative, as everyone else's national narrative, is not based on the historical, or say, naked truth, because it's not supposed to be based on the naked. But we are speaking about national narrative. We speak about the history as our idea of what happened in the history. And this is my definition of history. Our perception of the things that were in the history. Because we are on this side, we could try to get there, but for many, many events, we have only one or two documents, and we have to make up the rest, especially if we need it in our national narrative. So the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid was abolished in 1767, and its eparchies were redistributed under the Patriarch of Constantine, which was seen as the saddest moment in the history of Macedonian people, where they lost their spiritual, educational, cultural pillar. And this process is perceived as strongly as an illegal action of the Sultan on the basis of the slander of the evil Greek Patriarch. So this is the essence of the national myth, that actually the church, the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid was so great that even the Sultan could not overrule it. We are not going to get into this discussion. And from now on, basically, the entire process of national liberation got the story of the re-establishing of the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid as a Macedonian church. So it was not starting to make a new state, but it was to start or to revive the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid in order to apply for a different millet. We'll get a little bit about the millet system later on. And the question, or the biggest theme in all this, is that the national church, or the Macedonian Orthodox Church, has preserved the Macedonian national identity. But unfortunately, this national narrative failed to say how this church, not existent in the 19th century, which is the most important part for national building, has saved the Macedonian national ethnicity, or say, when the church did not exist. Because what we had were three other churches in our historiography and in national narrative is seen as a propaganda. They try to ruin or to condemn or to stop this Macedonian national identity. And those three churches are the churches, the Greek church, the Bulgarian church, and the Serbian church. Actually, the churches of the states of our neighbors. Of course, when we say about the Greek church, we do not think about the Athens church, but we think about Constantinople. And when we say about the Bulgarian church, we are speaking about the Exarch, the Exarch, long before the Bulgarian Orthodox Church was still done. And it is an interesting thing that with this story of the three churches that are trying to ruin the national identity, it gives the empty argument that there is another church that actually was fighting against those three churches. But historically, we don't have that, because at that time, we had already those three churches. And which is more important, that the idea of restoration of the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid then is seen that even we have these three propaganda from our neighbors that try to demacedonize the population. And then we have two other propagandas in the national narrative and even in the historiography, which are not denationalizing. One is the Catholic Church and the union actually with Rome. And it is also seen as another process or a protest of the process that will lead to, again, the revival of the Ohrid Archiepiscopia. So we had several waves of this union with Rome, one starting in 1859 in Kukush, with the Kukush-Kiklis union. And then even the Protestants as well are seen as a foreign propaganda, which is, again, as the Catholics not directly denationalizing the Macedonian nation, but still seen as a form of, again, trying to re-establish the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid. So this idea continues even after the Ottoman Empire. As we know, with the Balkan Wars of 1912, 1913, the territory of today, Republic of Macedonia, became part of Serbia, and after World War I in 1918, it became part of the kingdom of Serbians, Croatians, and Slovenians, later renamed in Yugoslavia. And then the Serbian Orthodox Church, the only church present there, was seen as a pillar of the Serbization of Macedonia, because they never accepted existence of another nation in the southern part of their kingdom, but them only as a Serbian or South Serbian. Then during the World War II, Bulgarian occupying forces has expelled all the Serbian bishops and priests, replacing them with the Bulgarian. During the World War II, on the liberated territory in 1943, there was an initiative board organized for construction of the Macedonian Orthodox Church as a body that continues the tradition of the Archiepiscopia of Ohrid. And then at the assembly of the priests in liberated Skopje of 1945, there was the second priest meeting held, which came up with four conclusions or decisions. First, that after the war to forbid the Serbian bishops and priests to return to Macedonia. Then re-establishing of Archiepiscopia of Ohrid, this time as a real Macedonian church, and this was set as a high priority. And also to make the priest advisory bodies that will fulfill the function of the bishops until Macedonian bishops were elected. And then the Yugoslav government saw this as a very, very nationalistic, and everyone involved in this process were imprisoned. So later on, they changed the idea of, instead of looking for a Macedonian Orthodox Church, try to have an incorporated Yugoslav Orthodox Church, with the Orthodox Church in Macedonia as a part of it. And of course, the Serbian Orthodox Church was strongly against this. And then a board was appointed to speak with the Serbian Orthodox Church. How much time we have left? 5 minutes, okay. Skip, big skip. Speaking of the millet system, we have to understand a few things about the millet system. Millet system is a Sharia law thing. It's not about no, it's purely Islamic Sharia law, which means that the people of the book could have their rights to decide about their matters if a Muslim is not involved. So millet is purely religious as a form. The idea of millet as a ethnical type of thing becomes very, very late in the 19th century. Therefore, we have only the room millet for every type of Christians, and we have the patriarch of the Constantine as responsible for this. So, in the entire, majority of the life things like marriages, deaths, and inheritance was responsible of the church, which is recognized by the millet. But then when the schools started, basically in the 19th century, in order to have a school in vernacular, in your language, then you have to have a recognized church. And this is when the idea about the millet started to get the ethnical part of the thing. But it's only in the 19th century. And we also have to say that the whole idea about the new ethnical millets, it has to do with the foreign powers and their pressure on the Ottoman Empire for more right on the Christians. So we have to, if we speak about this topic, we have to understand that at least in this part of the Balkans, we have to have that we have to stick to this millet idea that ethnicity is basically, how to say, under the religiousness. This idea from the 19th century goes on, even today. So the question is that the religious came before the ethnicity, and therefore those two things are seen as a one thing. And when we look, many times, in our national stories, we always try to forget about this religious part. We say that the church was the founder of the nation, or it was in a ethnical or in a sociological part, but we have to have this idea that this is, again, I would say that the Ottoman Empire didn't care about nationalities unless you pay taxes. And your millet, your religious body was the one that takes care about you. And that even as we see in this example here, the national identity, the birth of the Macedonian national identity and in the national narrative is connected to the church, of re-establishing of a church. That actually, we are probably seeing this final 1 century later now, the events that are happening now. I will probably close here.